Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, it's Friday, and you know what that means. This week, you get a podcast. Last week, I had some stuff come up and wasn't able to put a podcast out for you guys, but nonetheless, here we are a week later. And John Limnios, I hear you, bro. I hear you. I got a lot of people, Russell, Richie, a lot of guys sending me messages. Where's the podcast this week? So, unfortunately, guys, sometimes, listen, bro, what can you do? Week after week, making it happen. So, here's a podcast for you guys this week, and this week's a good one. So a lot of times out there, there's in the world of kit cars, there's a million different kit cars and fiberglass cars and specialty sports cars that they've made on the VW platform. One in particular is the Devin, and that's what today's podcast is about. I first saw this Devin at the Type 3 Rally open house that ended in 2022 over at ISP West, and it was quite a unique looking car, and I was fascinated by a lot of the history on it. So on today's podcast, we've got Reid Kerlin, who's the owner of this really cool Devin, and this it's a pretty unique car. It's got some cool history, and the story of Devin, the manufacturer, was pretty cool. You know, a sports car enthusiast and wanted to build a universal platform that would fit on all kinds of stuff. So you could find these cars with a V8, you could find them with a rear engine 4-cylinder, you could find them fashioned a bunch of different ways. And it's pretty unique how people that get into this hobby using the platform of and designing a car to fit on multiple platforms, it's pretty ingenious, and they love the hobby and they want to create a platform for people. So it's a pretty cool story, a lot of detail and information on the Devin itself. So something cool and unique to be on the lookout for when you guys are looking over people's fences in their backyard to see what kind of Volkswagens they got. So who knows? One of you guys might get lucky and stumble on a Devin someday, but this is the story of the Devin. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys to support the people that support Let's Talk Dubs. Go to VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. Pictures were sent over this week for the photo shoot for Zorba that's going to be coming out in VW Trends, as well as some stuff overseas. So I was pretty excited about that. Recently, I just did a photo shoot. If you guys are on my Instagram, I did a photo shoot over at Caesar's Palace. The folks over at Caesar's were kind enough, and with a little bit of finagling on my end, were able to get me a nice spot right in front of Caesar's to get that car shot, which is what I really wanted to do. So I was excited to see that happen, to be part of that. And I called my buddy Alex of Flat 4 Media. He came to town. We made a couple of shoots, and you guys will be able to get to see the latest creation by Buddy Hale that was at the Triple Crown last year. Buddy's won a bunch of awards with this car, and it's Wayne Callahan's 60 watt. Super cool car. We'll be getting Wayne on the podcast coming up here soon. Wayne's the original owner of the 68 Bug, and it's been Buddy Hale. This thing is custom tip to tail, and it's super slick. And the even cooler part is Wayne's out there driving it. So we spent some time running around the streets of Vegas last week for the photo shoot. So it was a great time. Look forward to that podcast. And the car has not been featured in a VW magazine yet. It's been in Wheel Hub magazine and a bunch of hot rod magazines, but it has not been featured in a Volkswagen magazine as of yet. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because that car was shot along with mine this last weekend. So super stoked about that, and being able to bring you guys a story on that, because it's a really cool story. And if you haven't seen this car, I'm working with Wayne to get him down there to the VW Revival weekend. So we'll probably be at the RVA show on Saturday for sure. And we'll be coming to the DKK open house. So if you guys are going to be out and about and you want to see a super cool car, one of the latest creations from Buddy Hale, before the next one comes out, you'll want to come check out the 60 watt owned by Wayne Callahan. So excited to be able to help my friends get their stuff out there for them. So lots going on here in Let's Talk Dubs world. One crazy weekend is coming up, and I can't tell you how stoked I am. Room reservations are stacking up. We're 6 months out. There's a lot of rooms pre-reserved. So you guys, please, if we're early and you book rooms, we can take the whole hotel. If you guys wait till the last minute, you could end up getting your room blocked. A perfect example, a room right now is going to cost you about $100 a night. So much cheaper than anywhere I go in Southern California. Now, a couple years ago when they had the show, just before then, there was a Notre Dame game here happening in Las Vegas on the same day. People that didn't book their rooms, they could get a room. It was now $400 a night. So do yourself a favor, book your rooms early for one crazy weekend. I notice that I didn't have the Poker Run purchases available on the website. The Poker Run is now available. Some of you guys that don't know the Poker Run, it's where after the car show on Saturday afternoon, we all get in our cars. I send you all over the valley to get poker cards. You come back, I deal you your final card, and who takes the money, right? So somebody cashes out just under $1,200, and then we get another few $100 and another few $100 and some couple surprise things here and there. So if you haven't done it, it's a blast. It's one of my favorite things to be part of. I'm jealous that I can't do it with you guys because it's just such a blast to cruise around with you and 40 other Volkswagens bombing around Vegas on a Saturday night. So it's a great time. You don't want to miss that. The $30 for the car show does get you parking all weekend upstairs in the parking garage. So this year, because we filled the parking lot last year, the Orleans has given us the top floor of the parking garage, which I will tell you this, has the most incredible strip view at night. It is an epic location. On top of that, it's concrete, not asphalt. So hopefully we don't get a little unseasonably warm weather like we did last year. It'll be even cooler up there. And there's plenty of room. So if you guys are clubs and you want to get together, make sure that you guys put some of that stuff in your notes. In the next week or so here, you guys that have registered for the car show will start getting your car show entry form. So look out for that. And it's going to be one crazy week in October 2nd through the 4th at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. For more information, go to letstalkdubs.com and click the link that says Showtime. If you want to sponsor or support your boy at Let's Talk Dubs, pick up some merch, go to letstalkdubs.com, click on the merch tab, and pick up some cool VW gear and support your boy. So been doing a lot, got a lot of stuff coming up, so many car projects to have that are on the way, things that are happening for one crazy weekend that we're going to be doing a roundtable coming up here pretty soon. So a lot of you guys love it. Some of you guys don't, but most of you guys love it. I get a lot of good feedback on the roundtables. So lots of cool stuff. We're going to do another, last time we did VW Trends, top 10 magazines. This time we're coming up, we're going to do Hot VW's top 10 magazines of the 80s and the 90s, the 80s, late 80s, 85 to 90, or 85 to 89. So that'll be coming up. That's a YouTube video that if you haven't seen it, currently it's on my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, go check it out at YouTube, Let's Talk Dubs, and go check out that YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe to George's YouTube channel, The Wagon, if you want some really cool how-to stuff for your Volkswagen. So anyway, guys, more on the back end of this. Let's get into it. Read Kerlin, the Devin on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's podcast, you know, when you're out there in the VW scene and you see something that's a little bit different and a little bit unique, you kind of take a double take and get a little closer and check it out. And about 2 years ago, I was at the Type 3 open house at ISP West, and I happened to see a car there that was a really unique car. I almost would describe it as like a car you could draw when you were a kid or something you'd see in like a late 60s cartoon. So, and that car was a Devin, and that there's a lot of history about this, and that car is owned by Reid Kerlin. And on today's podcast, I've got my buddy Reid on here, and we're going to discuss the Devin and some of his history. So, Reid, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, so, you know, I saw the car. That's the first time I think I saw the car. I saw it once or twice before then, but this was the first time I got to sit and chat with you, where we talked for quite a while at the ISP West open house. I think it's probably 2 years ago. And, you know,
yeah, it was right at the end of the Type 3 rally.
Yes. And so, you know, the Devin's got a Type 3 motor in it. And
correct.
And so, you know, the way we always, you listen to the podcast, so you know how the podcast goes, and it takes a special kind of somebody to drive a car like that. But the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens? And we'll figure out how you got into the Devin.
Well, it is definitely, it's a crooked line, but it's a line and you can trace it. It started in the back seat of my dad's Type 3 Squareback. That was his daily driver. It was a 70. And he daily drove that probably into the early 90s. So I was always in the back seat or the front seat. I love that car. It was so much fun. And as I got older, I was starting to get to the point where I could actually like build a car and, work on cars. And I was kind of gearing up to set that. But at that point, my dad had gotten another car and sort of handed the car to my sister to drive. And, the speedo didn't work, and she took a corner a little bit too fast and ended up popping a curb and taking out a split rail fence and a bush and bent the pan. So unfortunately, that car went away just as I was on the cusp of being able to, really drive. And so I saved up, and I ended up picking up a 60 Karmann Ghia. And it was a project. I think I paid probably $800 for it or something at the time. Some found it in recycler. The guy was out in Hollywood somewhere and had my dad come with me, and we snatched it up. And I worked on that in high school, and brought it to the auto shop at high school, and had some fun working on that and trying to get it straight. But ultimately, it being that kind of transitional year, Karmann Ghia, and back then when you were trying to like do things all nice and try to get it back to stock without the internet on a 1960 Karmann Ghia, trying to figure out what parts are the correct parts. Yeah. It was a mess trying to do that. So.
And what year is this? What year is this that you're building? You're doing the.
That would have been 91 and 92 that I was trying to fix that Ghia, and eventually that went by the wayside. But luckily, my best friend at the time, his older stepbrother, he drove a Volkswagen Thing, and he had it was an old Acapulco version, blue and white, and no roof. He lives right by the beach, and he was always zipping around in that. And in high school, when he was out of town, my best friend would take it, and we'd go to parties and drive around in it. And I love that car, and sort of fell in love with the Thing. And I was eventually able to buy that car probably like in 94, 95 for $500.
Oh, wow.
And then that sort of became a project with my dad and me. And he had just recently retired, and he was sort of a construction project manager guy. And so he loved to spend his days going through lists and, catalogs, the Gene Berg catalog, and, Carcraft and Johnny Speed and Chrome, and, all these places, okay, what parts do we need? Where do we need? And finding out. And then, when I didn't have class on a Wednesday, we'd hop in the car and drive down to Orange County and stop off at all the shops and get our stuff for the weekend, and we'd crank away on the car. And I ended up building up as like a pre-runner. It was lifted, bus transaxle, built out a 2054.
Nice.
2 bumpers, a whole roll cage, 911 seats in it. Did everything basically but body and paint on that car. And then he sort of suddenly passed away, and I just sort of shoved it in the garage. And
what year was this?
That would have been 96. And so that sat in the garage maybe a little bit after. It was a runner driver. I drove it around for a year or so, no top, all the way, through the rain or whatever. It was just, I would just throw on a hat and throw a trash bag on the seat, and that was my daily car. And I probably drove that, and I drove that probably until about like 90, 95. And then I ended up picking up a friend's Pathfinder, and that car got sort of just pushed in the garage. Yeah. And it sat. And fast forward, 10 years, 10, 11 years, my sister and I had ended up inheriting the house, and we kind of let everything stay there. I stayed there, she stayed there, but everything sort of stayed the same. And after 10 years, it was pretty clear that neither one of us was going to be able to buy ourselves out of the other share of the house. The house was actually in the Palisades. so that the real estate in that area sort of took off.
Sure.
And so we decided to sell the house, and I had to pull it out of the garage. And at that time, I had just moved up into Topanga Canyon, and I brought it up here, and I was going to start restoring that, and then I lined up a body guy, and I was going to put it back to stock because, it was originally in Acapulco.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put it back to an Acapulco form. And while I was kind of in the process of that, another Acapulco showed up on eBay, and for less than my body and paint. And so I ended up just buying that, and ended up selling my old Baja one to a buddy, and that's now a project for him and his daughter to complete. So yeah, I'm excited about that. But so I have the thing, I have this Acapulco thing. The wife loves it, everything. But I live in the Santa Monica Mountains, and there's some great driving roads, and so I wanted something that I could drive in the canyons, and so I was looking for a speedster, or maybe a Spider or something along that lines that I could pick up. And I knew about Devins. I didn't think that I'd ever find one because they're sort of few and far between, or you find them and they're super roached out, or they're way too nice for what my budget. And,
so now that, before we jump into how you found the Devin, let's give a little bit of history on the Devin so that people, because obviously if you know what a Devin is, which our listeners are about to find out, a little bit of the history and why the Devin was out there and all that fun stuff, so that they can appreciate the find. Give us a little history on the Devin itself, like the company, the car, the kit, all that stuff.
Yeah. So Bill Devin, the man behind Devin Industries, he was a racer, and he owned some car dealerships in the Midwest, and he ended up selling those, but he was really interested in racing and engineering, and he sold his dealership in the Midwest and decided that he was going to buy a Ferrari and race Le Mans. And he goes to Italy, and was supposed to have this car ready for him. And of course, Enzo does not have the car for him. And Enzo offers to sell him last year's cars. But in the meantime, he sort of hangs out in the village and the factory, gets a factory tour, and sort of sees the cars being made and starts thinking in his mind. He's like, I could do this. This, it doesn't look too difficult. So he ended up not racing, but he came back, and he eventually did get a Ferrari that he raced and campaigned and it ended up on the cover of Road and Track back in the day. But he started, his engineering mind sort of kind of took over, and he had picked up some panhard parts and started building custom bodied panhards. And that was like his first thing, was doing these bodies on these panhards for racing. And in that process, yeah, there's a shot. He had actually, with another friend of his, had figured out using these Norton motorcycle overhead cam heads, and was able to adopt them to the panhard motor. And then instead of using the push rod, to be able to handle the valves, he contacted a company that had started making sprocketed rubber belts, and they were making them, I think, for like conveyor systems or whatever. But he took it and was able to modify it and essentially made the first overhead cam motor that used a rubber sprocket belt.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately, he never patented it. Otherwise, we probably would have had a different story to tell about him. He might have had a little bit more backing for his other project. So these panhards, they campaigned well, and he had this really sleek body to him. And then that sort of, then he started in his engineering part of it. He had friends that were racers, and this one friend of his campaigned a Ermini 357. And it's rumored that's where he took the splashes off. And that Ermini car was an aluminum-bodied Italian race car that was bodied by Scaglietti. And Scaglietti is really known for, it's the coach building spot that was directly across from the Ferrari factory.
Right.
And they designed, some, the Testarossa and the Monza and some of the, obviously the best cars in racing in that period. Right. Best looking cars for sure. And so he was able to take a splash mold off of the Cermini, and he sort of modified the nose a little bit to make it easier to pop out of the mold, and did a little bit in the back too. But he, his engineering mind, he sort of pioneered making. Well, I would say, in the past when you were making when people would make fiberglass bodies, you have to build a buck, right? So they have to have something that you can mold the fiberglass on, and everyone would build a solid buck, and it would be this one size. And if you're going to make multiple bodies, it would be that one size. And he came up with a system of where you could make the buck modular, and you could make the car wider or longer for wheel track or wheel length. And eventually was able to make this body style in 27 different sizes.
Oh, so the Devin itself is available in a lot of different configurations?
Yeah. So he basically he ended up making the first body style. It's sort of referred to as the 295, because at the time it was available for $295. So this is how we refer to that body style, this early body style.
Sure.
And basically the bodies were labeled by the alphabet, and then he had some even wider versions. But with that, if you were a racer back in the day and you put your MGTC into the hay bales, $295, you could get this body, rip off all your mangled body work, and never have to swing a hammer, and figure out how to mount this body onto your chassis, make some chassis mounts, pop it on, and you're racing the next week.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so, there was a lot of people back in the day in Southern California. It was such a racing hotbed of everybody building cars, whether it's a special or they're converting, their main cars, manufacturer cars. And, or whether it was even just a hobbyist that read an article in a mechanic magazine or whatever,
sure,
where they would always, he'd always have these ads, hey, build a sports car. So there you can see that's the Devin D body style. It's a little later, but about 59 right there.
Yeah.
But on a bug based frame.
Yeah, looks like the picture looks like it's got 16-inch the Steelies on there from like a split window or something. Yeah.
There and back in the day, and I think my notes here. I think in '58, in Sports Car Illustrated, there was like a photographic build explanation that went on, that article that they had, and where they took a bug body, stripped it off, shortened the pan, basically made it the same wheel length as a 356, and then got that correct smaller body style and figured out how to mount it on. And it was like a 2-part series or whatever, and they kind of showed how to build this sports car on the bug chassis. Somebody has that car right now, and I think it's being restored, but it's that exact car is still out there within the Devin enthusiast community. And I believe it's being restored, or it's being at least talked about being restored.
Now, how many Devins did they make?
He was terrible at keeping records. That was not his strength. And I've never really seen any firm numbers. I think in some of his later sports cars, like he eventually came out with a completely bespoke chassis that was designed in Ireland, and that's a whole other big story with that. But the Devin SS was his full-blown campaign racing car, and it was Chevy powered and had inboard brakes, and he designed a whole rear diff with inboard brakes and a DD on rear end, and it was a monster back in the day. Yeah. And
I mean, it's real Cobra-esque. It kind of looks like a little bit
real Cobra-esque, but you can see that it still has very, very much the Devin lines. The rear fenders were sort of arched up a little bit more, and the mouth was opened up, and that the hood would raise so you can get a big block under there. But that, those cars were, they were really, essentially that. You're talking about taking a big V8 and putting it in a small bodied race car. He was doing that before Carroll Shelby.
Yeah.
I think had Chevrolet not had the Corvette already, I think he probably could have been able to pull a lot more factory support from Chevrolet. But I think they were really focused on their fiberglass car.
And so he starts production of the Devin company in what year?
He is, it kind of starts with those Panhards, so early 50s.
So early 50s doing that, and then he decides that I'm going to just make a universal body for people. So when you got the car, like your model, your model's the 295?
Yeah, it's a 295. Specifically, it's the K. So it has a wheelbase and wheel track that fits a bug pan.
Okay. And on that 295, you would put it on a Beetle pan, but if you bought a V8 one, did it come with any substructure, or what did they have to bolt everything to?
No, it was really just the body. And the body would kind of come in half and nestled into itself. And so where the door openings were sort of long, and you could stretch it depending, in that area, depending on trying to meet your wheel length and adjust it a little bit, within 6 inches or so to make that fit. And they had some different hood styles. He did have like a Monza hood or a Testarossa sort of hood bump to make clearance for carburetors and that sort of thing. But really, everybody sort of says, "Oh, Devin, it's a kit car," but it really wasn't a kit. It was a body. Like, you got a body, and you had to figure out how you were going to attach it to your pan. And and that's what's kind of unique with these, is everyone that you see is sort of approached differently. Other than that article about putting it on a bug pan in that magazine, everything else was like, you had to figure that out in your garage.
And so
I think the complexity in that is that a lot of what you see in those Devins are sort of incomplete projects that are still sitting out in the hayfield. I got pushed out behind the barn when Uncle Ricky finally gave up on that venture.
Right. And so with these cars, with the Devins themselves, there's kind of a huge following. I mean, especially because were these fairly competitive? Did you see them on the SCCA circuit and stuff like that?
Oh yes, and they're still competitive today. There's tons of people. You go to Velocity International and you'll see there's some very historic race cars today. Back in the day, Ack Miller, who is a very famous driver, he won the Class C Pikes Peak. I wrote this down because I always amazed at this. From 58 to 66, he won Pikes Peak in Class C, which was like their sports racer class, and basically shut the class down. No one wanted to compete with him, and he had a Ford 427 Cobra engine in it, and he just stomped it. And there's a YouTube video, you can actually see footage of him ripping up Pikes Peak on the dirt.
And what was his name? Mac Miller?
Ack, A-K.
A-K, Ack Miller. I thought you said Ack, and I was searching it, spelling like, well, it must be A-C-K, but Ack Miller, huh?
Yeah. But he was a very famous Southern California hot rodder, really big in the, some say that he was probably around like for the first drag race in terms of like why you run it, or he at least had some of the lore as to why, like, why do you run the quarter mile, and the first drag race being against a quarter horse supposedly. But he was big in the scene, and he was building these special, he loved his, engineering his own chassis, and he would spend time to make these metal bodies to go over it. And when Bill Devin started making these bodies and he saw that, he was like, well, now I can spend all my time making sure my suspension is right. And all I have to do is pop it over. And, and other people, Dean Moon did a drag car, the Moonbeam that he campaigned in '59. And that drag car is still out there. It's in a collection somewhere back east.
And these bodies, the fiberglass work was pretty decent on these things. They're fairly thick, or what?
Yeah, well, he used fiberglass cloth as opposed to chop mat for a lot of what he did. And so what that enabled him to do is actually make a really thin shell, a very strong, lightweight body. So that's really what made it so great for racing, as opposed to a lot of these other bodies that people were making where they'd lay in the chop and it would get super thick and super heavy really quick. But he was able to really keep it thin. And even when you look at the deck lid on my car, there's the footage. When you look at the deck lid on my car, it's maybe 2 layers of glass. It's really thin.
And it was, so he used sheet fiberglass, which was a little more cutting edge than the typical chop gun, and just kind of laying it like that.
Well, it was just more expensive. The chop mat was sort of the shortcut for converse curves and things, because you can lay it in and push it down, and it'll meet those convex and converse corners. Where the chop or the woven cloth, you really had to stretch and pull and get it to lay flat. It was a little more skilled to lay it in.
And now, with respect to, so anybody that's kind of in there looking for a Canyon car, it's like a 914, a 356. There's like the cars that are known for handling, and then guys that are really into the vintage kind of niche cars, they know about the Devin because it's one of these unique things. And he was building them out of Southern California. Is that correct? Is that where he was building them out of?
Yeah, he started in El Monte, and then he was out in Lancaster and Montebello, I think, was another spot. The interesting thing is he never really went out of business. He never sold anything off. He just sort of just shrunk or expanded as needed. And up until he passed away, you could still pretty much call him up and say, hey, I need a hinge, or I need this. And he would, if he had a part stock, or he'd make it and sell you. Stories of people who are like, oh yeah, I bought a hood fairing, a helmet off of that sort of thing. So, he was still there sort of supporting his market. And, when he died, there was sort of the Devin guys that knew him and were really fans and wanted to make sure that none of this just got thrown away or lost. And they bought everything from the widow, and they threw it all in a shipping container, or multiple shipping containers. And it just sort of sat. They didn't really know what they were going to do with it, but they knew that it needed to be saved. And a gentleman by the name of Kevin back in Pennsylvania actually bought the company in probably 2020, probably around, or late 2020, early, somewhere around there, but shipped everything back to Pennsylvania, and he's now making bodies. He's made a mold for the 295. He's made a mold for the Devin D and the SS. He's made, they're making cars again. So if you want a body, you can contact Kevin and still get one and live that sort of mid-century racing dream.
Now that's cool. Now let's get to the story of your car. So how do you discover your Devin?
So I discover my Devin through Bring a Trailer. Mm-hmm. That's where let's walk that back a little bit. It was technically, I'll say it was Facebook. There's a Devin group in the Forgotten Fiberglass group of family of groups on Facebook, and I had joined that, and Craig, the guy that heads up the Devin registry, he happened to be over at the Devin the new Devin factory with Kevin, when this dealer who had his shop down the road a little bit, had brought the car over to get it certified that it is an actual Devin body. Because there were some agreements, and back in the day there were some partnerships that didn't work out, or some people have taken splash molds off of original bodies, had remade them because they weren't available for a time, and so he had brought that car to him to have it certified, and had posted up some pictures in that Facebook group, and no information on the car really, just like, hey, check out this Devin in here to get certified. And I could see it was on a bug pan. I could see that it was a Type 3 motor because it had the little oil cap sticking out on the rear.
Right.
And it just really perked my interest. Just the fact of like, my dad had the square back in the day. I was like, so it's Type 3. So usually when you see these cars with a Type 1 motor in it, you'll see it with a big camel hump in the back because people have to create something to make space. To be able to fit that vertical fan. And so seeing it with the Type 3 motor in there, I was like, oh,
it was perfect.
I actually kept the lines. I had it had a funky, like, it looked like windshield was off of a runabout, like, boat or something from back in the day.
Yeah.
And he basically said it was going to be listed on Bring a Trailer. And so I had just really watched the listings all the time. And there was at the time, you couldn't flag a Devin as
like a search
as
term.
a watch list. And so I was like just constantly, yeah. And so they didn't have like a separate manufacturer for Devin to be able to flag. And so it was just this constant sort of search of like, okay, is it listed yet? Is it listed yet? Is it listed yet? And then it finally popped up. And then I finally really got some good complete photos of it, and that's from the dealer. And the story with this car is that the guy that had built it, he built it in '59 and drove it until '69. That the last like inspection sticker on the original windshield was still there, that expired in December or January of 1970. And so the story was that it got in '69, it got pushed into the garage and it sat for about 25 years. And this mechanic guy down the street, he ended up purchasing the car and got it running and drove it around the block and then pulled it into his garage as a project. And it sat for another 25 years. So when I got it from this auction, it was essentially a 50-year-old time capsule that had sitting there. The dealer had gotten it run. Obviously, the brakes didn't work. And so,
now you broke up. You broke up a little bit there. Back up just like 10 seconds. Oh, you said the dealer got it. Did the dealer get it running?
Really shot, but the motor seemed, but he had some videos of it driving around the clutch, and it was, it wasn't running well. And but at least I turned over, and how hard could these things be? It's a Volkswagen.
Right.
So I eventually get it shipped out, and I was trying to think, I'll get the house and I'll start tearing into it and everything. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, there isn't a nut or bolt on that thing that hasn't turned in 50 years. And I am going to get in there. I'm going to break studs. I'm going to crack my knuckles. I'm not going to have the right puller or thread repair kit or something, And so I decided I would send the car out to Lizard Motorsports and have the Lizard work on it. And so he sort of mechanically refreshed the car, went through the motor, made sure it was right. The only mechanical thing that we found really wrong, other than like storage age stuff, was the transaxle. It was an old split. It's built on a 56 pan. I don't think I mentioned that, but
so it's
it was
titled,
a 56 bug pan that.
Is it titled as a 56?
So when I got it, it is now. When I got it, it had a reconstructed title from a Pennsylvania title, original, 1959 title, as
special,
reconstructed, and it had a state issued VIN number for 1959.
Got it.
And the long and short of it, in Pennsylvania, back in the late 50s, even if you changed out a fender and put back a fender with the same fender, like you wrecked your Ford and you pull the fender off and you put the correct Ford fender on, they would classify that as being rebuilt. And so in California, a rebuilt title translates to salvage here.
Yeah.
And so when I was trying to register it, it wasn't a salvage car, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't get flagged as that. And then there's also the issue of is it a special construction vehicle, which then they would put their own state VIN on it. With that, then you don't actually have a VIN year, and it sort of would lose its period built sort of cachet. It would be, it's just like a Kit Cobra or something, at that point. How do you know it was built yesterday or 50 years ago? And so luckily I was able to find a CHP inspector that agreed with me that the original bug VIN, and I actually got a booklet of the 1959 DMV rules for Pennsylvania off of eBay, and that had the language that explained how things were handled back then. And so with that, he kind of looked at the car, and I was trying to get him to register it as a Devin itself, because he did have a manufacturer's license. He did VIN cars that he built himself. And so I was trying to kind of get him to call the Devin. But in the end of the day, he didn't give me a blue state issued VIN, and he looked down and he saw the Volkswagen VIN on the back of the pan and just said, well, I look down there and I see a bug, so it's a 56 bug.
Well,
and I agreed with him.
Oh, it's better than special construction, right? I mean, at least you get something.
Yeah, and what's cool, in California now, because it's a normal titled car, I'm able to actually run a year of manufacturer plates. So I've got a 56 California plate on there, and everything looks period. And everything that I've been trying to do with the car is sort of keep it in that same period. I redid the wiring, and I hate zip ties, so I just laced it in.
That looks good.
Sort of changed. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. But, the whole idea of this car, in terms of my reconstruction of it is I really wanted to have that same feel of, a couple buddies building a car in their backyard. Yeah. A real racing special feel. And so that picture there is actually interesting. The silver car next to it is referred to as the buyer special, and that was built by a 16-year-old kid.
Really?
Using a bug pan, and he raced it. He won the SEC Junior Championships back east in that car, and it had several different power plants through the years, but it did finally, its sort of ultimate campaign version was a Porsche 356 motor in it. Wow. And then, he ended up selling it, and it bounced around a little bit. And for a little bit, the guy that heads up the Devin registry owned this car. And then a gentleman in Southern California ended up with it. And he put a Porsche motor in it and, got it running and spent a few years going through it. And so we were able to finally get, spend a day and run around with those. And that, this shot here is me sort of modifying the body back to normal.
So when you got it, there was
building out this car.
There was modifications done on it that were not factory.
Because correct. So everybody built these however they wanted to build them, and there wasn't necessarily an instruction manual, and the Devin 295 body is set up to use 5 3/4 inch lenses. Well, this guy had sourced some 7-inch lenses, and so he kind of fit it and fiberglassed out and built up the fender. You can see how thick it is on the fender there. and had sort of built out this hood that as soon as I put a 5 3/4 inch lens in there, then it just looked, the whole body line of the car and the arch of the fender was really off. And so I went in there and ground it back and got it back to its original body shape, and which was the other thing great because Bill Devin used the woven mat, and this guy had used a cross strand mat, so I knew exactly what I was removing and what level I needed to stop at.
Oh, nice.
Through the process, so I got the shape was very, very similar to what was originally out of the mold for it.
Now, and a couple of questions with respect to the registry, right? So it seems when I looked at yours, it just seems to make sense to put a Type 3 motor, right? It fits in there, not a lot of struggle. It's a real clean transition. Now, how many guys did Type 3? I mean, obviously you could do them any way you wanted. Now that you're on the registry, how many VW Devins are out there?
There's a few out there, but I haven't really seen many with a Type 3 motor. I don't want to say I'm the only one, but I'm kind of the only one that I can remember offhand.
And if they've got a Type 1, they've got to modify the deck lid to make it fit. Is that right?
Yeah. And so had I had a reverse shot of that buyer special, you would have seen that there was a bump in the back to make way for that 356 fan. So the Type 3 motor does really lead itself to that install. It's a little rough with the exhaust to sort of really hanging out there and everything with the with that fan setup sort of pushes everything back. But it does really fit the body well.
So with VW ones, I mean, I would assume the majority of these ones that are out are front engine V8 frame cars, or are they Volkswagen?
I mean, you'll see them on. There's a guy that built one on a Morgan chassis. You'll see them on MGs. You'll see them on Triumphs. You'll see them on Corvette. They put them on Speedster, Porsche Speedster chassis. There's at least a couple that I know of in terms of people wrecked their Speedster back in the day, cut the outer body off, got a body from Bill, and rebodied the car. One of them is a pretty famous car because it was owned Richard Boone. He was back in the day. He was the star of Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah.
But he had a Speedster, some back to production truck, backed it into a Speedster, ruined it. And so he contacted Bill Devin, and Bill put one of the 295 bodies on it, and actually did a dual helmet fairing on it, and a bench seat across it. A real cool looking car. It had been lost over the years, and supposedly it's been found again and restored. Is the story with that one? But
so
and
how many people are on the registry? How many cars are registered?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know offhand. I want to say probably. Definitely over 100. I want to say maybe up to 3. I should have checked that before I popped on here.
Well, no big deal. And what do they sell for right now? Like the one, there's obviously the silver car probably went for a few more bucks because of its history, or what do they sell for?
Yeah, so it really depends. A racing history will always carry a lot more weight. The Devin SSs, for instance, and also if it was a built by the factory Devin,
right?
That carries obviously a little more weight too. So in the Devin Ds and Cs, which were either when he was building those, you had an option of a Porsche motor or a Volkswagen motor. And then the C's, he ended up using a Corvair motor after he kind of came up with that after Porsche stopped his acquisition of Porsche motors to put in the Devin D, because it was winning all these races over Porsche cars back in the day. But those cars tend to, I've seen those go anywhere from the Devin C's and D's will go from, depending on condition, from 20,000 to into the 50s. The SSs are into the 100,000s. And there's some other, there's some other 295 specials, the Enchinda specials. Those have a very famous racing history, and those are going to be in the high, close to 100,000s, if not more in those cases.
And but go ahead.
But in terms of like some of the other specials, like backyard specials, be it a Triumph or an old Bug special, sometimes you can find them for get them for $5,000. And those already really come down to condition.
Sure.
And mine I picked up for 14.
And now the shifter, yours is a full length pan on your car, correct?
Yeah, mine's a full-length pan, and most of the guys would move the shifter back and move the handbrake back. The gentleman who built mine didn't, so he just bent the old shift handle. He just put a big S-curve in it, and so you just kind of reach out there, and the pedals are way far back, way far out, and luckily I'm tall. But if you're a short person, it's really a really awkward build. Yeah, you can kind of see there.
Well, that was one of the things I commiserated with you about, because we're both big boys. You know what I mean? And I looked at that car and I said, "Man, that's a tight fit." it's a tight fit in there, but it's still a long pan. But the doors are real short and everything.
There's plenty of room, and I've been putting new seats in and trying to work to. I'll be moving the seats farther back, and then I'll put in a new pedal cluster a little closer. Try to get the ergonomics a little bit better for fitting in the cockpit.
Now, is your suspension 100% stock on that?
I fit. Yeah, it's just the front beam was cut and rotated back in the day, and the shock towers were cut and sectioned to lower them.
Right.
But otherwise, it's still torsion suspension, everything. When I got it, it still had the split transaxle in it, non-synchroed, which is really fun for mountain driving.
Yeah. Sounds like it's supercharged with that whine.
Yeah, exactly. But I put Coney adjustables for shocks on all four, and I ended up fitting a 356A brake. Brakes on it. Again, just trying to keep with that theme of what would a racer of that day have access to, And so I'm like, well, brakes off of a 59 356 would fall right in line with that. So,
now, have you ever tracked the car?
I haven't tracked the car. No, and I don't think I really could, because there's no roll bar.
Right.
And I've considered putting it in, but it kind of ruins the body lines. You see these vintage cars and they've got this huge apparatus, the bar that comes down, and it's just,
right.
It's like a jungle gym.
Yeah.
And it's such a sexy, low, sleek car. And really the fact of the matter is with this vehicle, this is a one accident car. Yeah. If I get in this, I don't think a roll cage is necessarily gonna help me.
Sure. Now, so what are your now you've done a lot of work to get it back on the road to make it roadworthy. Is the motor that's in it, the original motor that was in it, what year was the motor?
So the motor that I got it with was a 64S version, 1500S.
Okay.
And I don't know the story in terms of, the car was titled 59, and then, they never cut the engine deck. It was all the original paint and everything on it, but it has the 64 motor in there. So whether he had started with the original Bug engine and just didn't want to cut the thing, and then when the squarebacks came out, he was able to source the squareback motor and put it in there. I guess that's what would happen.
And so right now it's running a 1600 in it right now, 1600 or 1500?
It's a 1500, the 1500S motor. They're dual stock cars, high compression. They only did that. I think I learned the fact from your podcast with your Type 3 guy that it was really a motor that they built for 1 or 2 years tops.
Yeah. So the motor hasn't been gone through since you've had the car. It just got tuned up and dialed in, or?
Well, yeah. Currently, the motor is out. pistons are pulled. It's sitting in my driveway with me, waiting to rebalance the pistons. It was a slippery slope, and boy, did I tumble down it.
Yeah.
A classic story. A broken bolt will ruin your day, sort of thing. And I came home after a great drive, and I was like, I'm sort of slowly. The idea was to slowly modify things so that I could actually delete the rear oil filler, and be able to get that underneath and kind of clean up the rear a little bit and figure out some ways to fill and measure oil off a Type 3 case. So I was putting in a different breather system so that I could actually fill through the breather. And I ended up cracking the breather support tower. And then, of course, to remove that, you have to remove the fan housing.
Right.
Because there's 3 bolts that go through the fan housing to that. Well, if I have to pull that, well, then I got to pull the exhaust. So I'm pulling the exhaust, and I break 2 head studs. And then I tried drilling that. I tried welding a nut on one, and it worked. And I tried welding it on the other one, and it didn't work. So then I started drilling to run an extractor, and that went south. And so I was like, well, I got to pull the head to bring it to a shop to put a time cert in. And as I was doing that, I dropped a nut down the case. And so then I'm like, well, I got to pull a piston sleeve. And then I pulled a piston sleeve, and then a ring fell into my hand when I pulled the piston sleeve. And, and then I was like, well, now I got to re-ring it. So if I'm re-ringing it, well, then I got to decarb everything and get it, really go through and just clean it up, and so then I was cleaning one of the pistons in the bathroom, and I was using this tool to clean the rings out, and slipped out of my hand, and one of the pistons goes bouncing across the marble floor. So then I'm on the Samba looking for replacement domed, 1500S pistons.
Right.
Which I found 2 with matching jugs. So I have those sitting in a box. But this last weekend, I just relapped in some new valves in the heads, and I gotta get a gram scale that's accurate enough for weighing pistons now. And
So
and now I'm probably on a government watch list for looking at gram scales on the internet. So who knows?
Well, it's classic VW life, right? You're just driving this car. You're like, let me just do this one thing. I mean, it happened with my Bull Run bus. I thought, you know what? Let me just do a roof clip on this thing real quick. And the car has been down for now 3 hours, and I can't even tell you how far off the beaten path we are on that car right now. But when do you think you'll have the car back together?
I'm hoping by the June VW events. That's what I'm kind of setting that deadline for me. I'm missing a rally or 2 that I wanted to be on, and so I with these things you do have to set those project deadlines, or they'll keep drifting.
Yeah.
But for a while there, I kind of just had to take a step back and just like, okay. Way too many things are going wrong, one after another. I'm just gonna just let that sit for a while, and hopefully that energy will flow away, and I can come back and actually get things correct. So which things are looking up. So
well, listen, if you ever need anything from anybody on the podcast, feel free to reach out to me. I'll use every resource we can, because the guys that are in this hobby, I've realized the people in this hobby are really willing to dig in and help out when people are trying to get something, especially if you're focused on getting something correct, as for the way the vehicle was, or something that you want to do to make sure that you get it right. So, I mean, well,
I'm going to shout out Lizard one more time, because Lizard has been so supportive with this car. And, I had, after I put the 356A brakes on, I wheel nuts back off a little bit. So it ended up wallowing out the splines on my 356 drum brakes and the axles. And, he was gracious enough to sort of set me up with a tunnel transaxle. And so now I can keep up with freeway speeds and new axles. Of course I had to get those drums resplined, which, whenever you put on a Porsche part, you sign up for the Porsche tax, and that was, That was a joy. But but that he was really helpful in that, and even putting in the replacing the broken studs in the head. Man, he did that on a Sunday morning for me when I just thought all I needed to do is get this one stud in there, and then we'll be good. We'll be good.
They say every 10
we'll
minute.
have it back on the road by Monday.
Every 10-minute job is one broken bolt away from being a 6-month project.
Yeah, and that's exactly where this happened in October, November, something like that. So,
wow. Listen, hopefully you get it back on the road, and we'll see you out here. You should bring it out for one crazy weekend. What's the furthest you've driven that car?
I've driven that down. Drove it down to a 356 concourse show, basically where they do I think it's where they do Silverado. Mm-hmm. So it was like probably for me, and so I kind of live up in the Santa Monica Mountains, close to Malibu, and it was probably like 150-mile round trip in that.
Yeah.
And that's a seat made out of electrical conduit with some fiberglass and some horsehair, I think, stripped from the old bug seat.
Not built for comfort.
Vinyl.
Yeah.
It
is built.
No, it's not.
It's got one job: lightweight. And high speed.
and that is it. And in the canyons, it is so much fun. And the guy that when he built this out, he put a lot of triangulation and support on, like welding it, so it's really stiff and very responsive for being a bug chassis. It's quite amazing how stiff it is and how well it loves the corner. And it's really, it's that go-kart feel. It's the slow car fast formula that is just beautiful.
Well, I tell you, man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing the story about the Devin, and I definitely think it's just one more cool thing that VW guys can be on the lookout for. And if anybody runs across one, they can. What's your Instagram handle if they run across one and they need a little assistance? Or
it's just Read K, READK.
Read K.
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Well,
follow me there in my adventures.
Yeah, well, for sure. Now, I'm assuming, am I taking the position that you're somewhat of a thing guy? Like you really know your things?
I do. I like to think I do, at least.
Well, I'm going to have to
know a thing or two about a thing.
I'm going to have you back because I want to do a thing special. I want to just talk about the thing itself, production, details, differences. And I actually, you remember a podcast that I did with a guy back east who was a salesman in Pennsylvania for a Volkswagen company. And I ended up purchasing every catalog he had, every original dealership catalog that he had. I did a package deal with him because he used to take them home after they'd go throw them in the trash and he'd take them home. And
right. I remember that one.
He's the guy that he restored Brewsters. And he had sent me, I have a thing brochure he'd sent me that showed all of the accessories, which has blown me away because I remember so many of these accessories throwing in the garbage thinking that's not stock. Throw this thing out, from the chrome wheels to like all kinds of VW dealer accessories. So I definitely want to have you back, and I want to do the thing breakdown, and we just kind of go over everything need to know about VW things. I think that would be a fun podcast to do,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know everything, but I like to think I know enough.
Well, we'll get into we'll get
through that.
Yeah, we'll get into it with some of the details between the Acapulcos and all that stuff because there's a lot of little detail to know about the things. But yeah, no, listen, I'm stoked that we got to talk about the story of this Devin and to kind of bring to the masses in the VW world what the story is with the Devin. And you guys will there'll be some links down in the description below to the Devin website, the registry, and some of these photographs that we have if you're not watching the video version of this. So, but yeah, Reid, man, I appreciate you for coming on the podcast and taking some time with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. And it's been a pleasure, long time listener, first time caller. And, I really had a blast with it. It was fun.
I love it, man. Well, I look forward to seeing it down. I'll be down there for that revival weekend. I'll be bringing Zorba down to the coast and looking forward to seeing a bunch of people down there.
I am looking forward to seeing that in person.
Well,
that is everything I've seen on that is just absolutely magical.
Well, and wait to see
really cool.
The photo shoot. We I kind of faked it till I made it over at Caesar's Palace and dropped a few names, and they said, use as much time as you need. And I shot it in front of the fountains, and it's going to be an incredible photo shoot. So that took place about a week ago.
Oh, that's great.
And if you listen on the podcast, we had Nicole Johnson's Detour, which is a YouTube channel. She did we did a video on the car down in San Diego through the canyons. And that video just finished editing, and it'll probably be out in about 2 weeks. So I'm excited for that because the producer of the show, Michael, is a big VW guy, and he's super stoked. And he was like, "I'm just looking at the video footage, and it's epic." And I was like, "If he's saying it's epic, I'm excited." And we're looking to get more of our VW culture out there in front of all the masses. So. Yeah, I'm excited, man, and hopefully I'll see.
That's rad. I really like the stuff she does.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you in June.
Yeah, I've been watching her channel too.
Yeah. No, she's
will be good.
Nicole's good people, man, and she's really into the car thing, man. So it's going to be cool. But yeah, Reid, thanks for coming on, man, and we'll have you back for the thing special.
Yeah, excellent. All right, thanks.
Thanks, man.
Good talking.
Well, if you like that podcast, and I know you did, make sure you don't forget to subscribe to Let's Talk Dubs. Also, share this podcast with your friends. And if you have any particular stories that you think might be interesting, send them to bill@letstalkdubs.com. That's my email address. You guys can send me any tips or things that you think might be interesting, topics or people that need to be covered in the VW community. It's not just famous people. It's anybody that's got a cool, unique story to tell that has something to do with something that made a little bit of difference in the VW scene. And I'm always more than happy to reach out to those people. So you can send me a message at bill@letstalkdubs. You can DM me on Facebook or Instagram. Facebook, I don't get to super quick, but Instagram. Now, speaking of that, I do have some emails to read. First one's from Joel Copeland. Says, first off, thanks for the show. Makes my drive home from work bearable. 2 hours, 125 kilometers one way. Well, I got my son into the air-cooled VWs, and in return, he got me into your podcast. He'd like to recommend Mike from Vintage Volkswagen on Instagram. His page has helped me survive many boring Zoom meetings. Mike really takes time with those that contact his page. So, Joel, I appreciate you for reaching out, and thanks for the suggestion. The next one was from someone who watched the YouTube. Well, I don't know if you watch YouTube channel because it showed the VIN number on there. It says, "Hi, you did a segment on Lee Hedges' world's oldest Type 34. What's the VIN number on that car?" Well, one of the things that's important if you listen to the podcast, he says VIN number in sequence is different than the actual production number of the cars, but you have to listen to that detail. But I can give you the VIN number. The video that you'll see on there, the VIN number was 1200. And speaking of videos, by the way, if any of my listeners out there into video editing and stuff like that want to help out with Let's Talk Dubs, because I'm a one-man band here, I have so much video content for these podcasts to put out small YouTube videos and stuff. The audio version does go up on YouTube, but I would definitely love to have the video content put up. I've got photographs. I've got so much stuff where, there's only so much one man can do on his own. But that's the VIN number for that car. And I'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, Icon Pistons. You guys want top quality, high performance pistons. There's only one piston to go with, and that's Icon Pistons. Currently, they're made in 85.5, 92s, and 94s, 3 different pin heights. Go check them out. Where are you going to buy Icon Pistons at? Well, I'm going to tell you that in just a minute, but first let me pump up the pistons a little bit. These are made from 4032 alloy, which allows you to run tighter piston to wall clearances so you can get down, keep that compression, and make that motor put out maximum power. They've got 2 1.5 millimeter top rings and then a 4 millimeter bottom ring, which makes getting new rings for these things a lot easier. And also each piston gets M42 skirt coating to protect against dry startups, as well as give an extra layer of protection. The skirt profile is optimized for stability and performance in boxer engines. And how would these guys know? Because these guys make millions of pistons every year. And now the Big Boy Piston Company put out a line because there's a VW dude that snuck in through the back door and said, "Hey, boss, let's make some Volkswagen pistons." So the highest performance pistons that you can get right now, Icon Pistons. Go get them checked out today. Where can you buy these Icon Pistons? Type E Motorsports, CB Performance, RevMaster, the Dub Shop, and Churco Performance. So go check it out today. You want the best pistons? Make sure you only get Icon Pistons. And let's not forget Ross Wolf, high quality aftermarket parts designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Some of the coolest product you can get for your car, from pulley kits to oil coolers, Viton gaskets, and push rod tube seals. These guys have a lot of cool technology that they're trying to bring to the VW scene, done by two enthusiasts, Jared and Jason, and these guys have a passion for it. They're doing it for the love of the hobby and not for the money. Trust me when I tell you this. These guys are hardcore enthusiasts, and they just feel the need to want to bring something better to the VW market. They both got day jobs. They do something else. This they do for their commitment to bringing better, high-quality parts to the market. So if you want those woven, the fabric woven colored spark plug wires, check it out. My favorite's the locking dipstick. There's lots of cool stuff that they have. So go check out their website today at rosswolf.com. Well, that about wraps it up for us this weekend, guys. Don't forget, I'm going to be out there at the VW Revival weekend. If you're out and about and you see me and you listen to the podcast, man, make sure you say what's up. Come by and see me, and I always have something special for podcast listeners. So until next week, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.